I read the family law statute on the train home. Section 12 of the Matrimonial Causes Act, 1973. A marriage is voidable if either party did not validly consent to it, whether in consequence of duress, mistake, unsoundness of mind, or otherwise. I read it 3 times. I underlined the word otherwise. By the time the train pulled into Reading, I had decided what I was going to do. I'd met Camilla in 2021. She was a friend of a friend at a colleague's birthday in Borough Market. Argentinian, architect, 2 years into a postgraduate at the Bartlett. Witty, well-read, ferociously well-dressed. The Spanish that ran underneath her English softened every consonant. The first time we met, she stayed 3 hours past when I'd planned to leave. We were married 14 months later. Small ceremony at Marylebone Town Hall. 40 guests. My parents flew in from Glasgow. Hers from Buenos Aires. The reception was at a restaurant in Mayfair I couldn't really afford and didn't want to admit I couldn't really afford. I picked up the bill anyway. She had been on a student visa when we'd met. I sponsored her spouse visa 6 weeks after the wedding. 30 months. We renewed it on schedule. Another 30. 5 years total before she could apply for indefinite leave to remain. The marriage worked. Or, I thought it did. We lived in a small flat in Bermondsey. She finished her postgraduate and got a job at a London architecture firm. I was 3 years into a partnership at a financial services consultancy. We holidayed in Mendoza twice. We did Christmas with my parents in Glasgow. Her mother stayed with us for a fortnight in 2024 and made empanadas every night for 2 weeks. I was happy. The crack came 26 months in. It was something small. I came home one Tuesday evening earlier than I'd told her I would. She was in the spare room on the phone. She didn't hear me. She was speaking Spanish, fast, animated, the way she only ever spoke to her sister, Sophia. I caught one sentence. 2 años más. 2 more years. She came out of the room 10 minutes later, kissed me, asked about my day. She did not mention the call. That night I lay in bed and thought about it for 2 hours. 2 more years until... what? Until our next trip to Argentina? Until her chartered architect qualification? Until her postgrad registration lapsed? I knew, with the small, awful clarity that comes at 3 in the morning, that she meant 2 more years until her indefinite leave to remain. I didn't say anything to her the next morning. I made breakfast. I kissed her at the door. I went to work. That evening I opened her laptop after she'd gone to sleep. I am not proud of it. I had never done it in 7 years. The browser history was clean. The email was clean. The WhatsApp on her phone was clean. She had been careful. But she had been less careful with the family iCloud we shared for photos. Inside an album she'd named Postgrad Documents, a label I would never have opened, were screenshots. 42 of them. Conversations with Sophia going back 4 years. 2 years before we'd even married. I read them on the kitchen floor at 1 in the morning. I am not going to repeat what they said. I will say that the marriage had been planned between Camilla and Sophia before our 3rd date. That the architect at the Bartlett had been chosen because of his stable income and a UK passport. That I was, in Camilla's own words, the right kind of safe. I sat there for an hour. Then I screenshotted every one of the 42 messages onto my own phone. Then I uploaded them to a private folder on a cloud account she did not have the password to, with two-factor authentication on. Then I closed her laptop and put it back on her side of the sofa exactly as I'd found it. Then I went to bed beside her. The next morning was a Wednesday. I went into work. I left early. I bought a coffee at Paddington and got on a train to Reading, because I had nowhere to go and an hour to think. I read the Matrimonial Causes Act on my phone. Section 12. The marriage was voidable on grounds of mistake or otherwise. The threshold in English law was high. Fraud as to identity or duress could void a marriage. Fraud as to motive could not. I would not be able to annul. I would have to divorce. But the Home Office did not need fraud of identity. The Home Office had its own published definition. A sham marriage was one entered into for the purpose of obtaining an immigration advantage. The threshold for that was lower. The penalty was different. The penalty was curtailment of existing leave, refusal of any future application, and a re-entry ban. By the time the train pulled into Paddington, I had decided what I was going to do. I instructed a solicitor in Lincoln's Inn the following Monday, a specialist in family law and immigration. I told her what I'd found. I gave her copies of the 42 screenshots. I asked her 2 questions. How quickly could a divorce petition be served on grounds of unreasonable behavior without my wife knowing it was coming until the courier arrived? And how, under the published Home Office sham marriage referral guidance, could a member of the public submit a credible report to UK Visas and Immigration with documentary evidence attached? She answered both in 20 minutes. She told me what to do, in what order, and what not to do. I went home. I behaved as if nothing had changed. I made dinner. I asked about her week. I let her plan our anniversary trip to Edinburgh. 6 weeks later, the petition was served. The Home Office report was filed the same morning. She left the flat that afternoon. She stayed with a friend. She did not come back. The divorce moved through mediation. We did not have property to fight over because the flat was in my name. She did not contest. She did not try to claim. She had been advised, presumably, that if she contested anything, she would only make the immigration referral easier to investigate. Her spouse visa was tied to the marriage. The marriage ended. Her leave to remain was reviewed. UKVI wrote to her with questions. She replied through her solicitor. The replies, I was later told, were thin. 8 months after the petition was served, her existing leave was curtailed. Her right to remain ended 60 days later. She flew home to Buenos Aires the week the curtailment notice took effect. I sold the Bermondsey flat. I bought a smaller one in Camberwell. I left the consultancy and joined a smaller firm. I went to therapy for 14 months. I am not the same person I was at 33. I would not want to be. I am 38 now. I am seeing someone new. She is from York. She knows the whole story. I told her on our 4th date, sitting outside a pub in Bloomsbury, because I was not going to start a second relationship hiding it. She asked me one question. She said, "Do you regret it?" I said, "No. I do not regret what I did. I regret not seeing it sooner. The two are not the same thing." This story is not about visas. Most people who marry across borders marry honestly. Most marriages that end end honestly. What happened to me was rare. The system, when you read it carefully, is fair. If you've been on the wrong end of a marriage you've been carrying alone, or if you've watched someone you love mortgage their loyalty for a piece of paper you didn't know they were waiting for, you're not alone. I'll be back. Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Stay clear-headed.